But anytime you're ready now.
Yeah, no, I just moved him down there. Yeah, he's good. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, everybody, I'd like to welcome you out to tonight's Planning Commission meeting for North Ogden City. It's December 1st, 2021. I am Vice Chairman Brandon Mason. I'll be conducting in place of Chairman Thomas, which is on your agenda tonight. It should be noted that we have a full quorum, but we are missing Commissioner Webb, who will be attending late on Zoom. Commissioner Thomas is absent. Who else are we missing? Commissioner Nancaro, is she excused as well? Okay. We do have a full quorum, so we will proceed. Let's see, what am I missing? Sorry, I'm a little frazzled. I was appreciative that that tonight the commission has opted for our normal a little bit of a change to our procedure. We normally would take this time to have an invocation or a thought followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Instead tonight, we're going to take a quick second to honor the life of a North Ogden resident who passed away recently. Stephen McKay Prisbury was a friend of mine and a friend of many in the town. He served on this planning commission for a number of years. Steve was a businessman in town who part owned the local fizz, had a real estate business, as well as a successful number of other careers. And Steve passed away in his sleep very unexpectedly on the 19th of November. It was very tragic. And in honor of the life of Steve, his service to this planning commission, he was on this body for a number of years, for the service he's given to North Ogden City, for the wonderful life that he led, for being the person that he was, and for the impact that he had on our town. I'd like to hold a moment of silence in his honor, please. Thank you very much. I appreciate the commission's willingness to do that. He was a dear friend to me and a dear friend to Commissioner Webb, and like I said, to many others. So I appreciate that. Let's commence with the rest of our agenda as stated. And if Commissioner Arner would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, for those of you who may be here for the first time, I'm going to read our opening meeting statement, which outlines a little bit of the procedures and stuff you'll see tonight. It should be noted that we do have participants on Zoom, or do we, Mr. Call?
We do have one currently.
Okay. So I will read the opening meeting statement, then give some a little bit of additions to the attendees on Zoom. Before each agenda item, city staff will give a report. After the staff report, the item will be opened up for other speakers. The applicant will speak first and be allowed up to 10 minutes. Following the applicant, any other interested person will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. The applicant has final rebuttal time of up to 5 minutes. Any materials that are displayed or referenced, for example, pictures or written materials, are part of the record and must be left with the commission. Speakers are required to have signed in at the door and will state their name and address before beginning their remarks. If you agree with the previous speaker, then state your agreement to avoid repetitious remarks. Speakers shall address the commission from the podium or microphone and shall address all comments to the planning commission. And please silence your cell phones. For those of you on Zoom, we're equally as interested in hearing if you do have comments. We would ask that you would use the raise your hand feature, and then you'll be elevated to a speaking permission. For those of you who may be on our Zoom call and have already that elevated permission, please silence yourself to avoid any feedback for the other participants. Did I get everything there? I think so. Okay.
And Commissioner Webb is on now.
Welcome, Commissioner Webb. Let's see. Do we have any ex parte communications or conflicts of interest to disclose? Anything for tonight's agenda? I have none myself. Okay, as stated, we're interested in hearing public comments. If you do have a public comment related to one of our agenda items, we'd ask that you save it for that particular topic and we'll give you an opportunity to speak. But if you do have any general comments or for anything not on the agenda, we'd be interested in hearing those now. Anybody on Zoom? Okay, in lieu of any comments, we can move right into our administrative agenda, which is item number 6. It says consideration and action regarding an administrative application, which is a site plan approval of a building footprint expansion and a parking lot expansion for 2255 North Washington Boulevard. So Mr. Hess, the time's yours.
Thank you very much. So what we're looking at here is part 1 of a multi-part application that came in. There's a boundary line adjustment where John's zooming in now on that site plan. The boundaries being, as it runs east to west there, that jog out that's pushed north for that length. If you go down right there, perfect, thanks, John. The old boundary ran east to west right there. The dental office is considering an addition. The property owner to the north and these folks have worked out the boundary line adjustment. That's an administrative application. It won't come in front of the planning commission, but the approval of the site plan and the boundary line adjustment are really linked together. Staff opted at this time not to bring the boundary line adjustment forward just because they're really the items of the site plan can take care of that. So tonight what we're looking at is an administrative application, site plan approval, and it impacts 6 parcels, though it only looks like 2 because it eliminates a 4-bay condominium parcel that was approved back in 2005 that would be pulling out an existing footprint of a building on the grounds today. Type of decision, I'll read this. When the planning commission is acting in an administrative capacity, it's acting as the land use authority and has limited discretion. Examples of administrative applications are conditional use permits, design reviews, and subdivisions. Administrative applications must be approved by the planning commission if the application demonstrates compliance with the approval criteria. For this file, staff did a comprehensive review through all of the site plan requirements in the commercial C2 zone, has determined that professional offices are a permitted use in the C2 zone, and there's a provision for a site plan when you're doing a modification to a building that requires it to be at least 50% of the current assessed value of the structure is being added to that structure. And that stops things like a vestibule or a minor improvement or landscaping improvements or things like that in existing structures from coming to the planning commission, and you just get bogged down in tons of these administrative items. This one looks like it meets that, it passes that test, and then also it's increasing the impervious surface area enough that there's potential stormwater impacts, and so we bring it forward to you. What we looked at were the site development standards. Those all meet for the commercial design, front setback shown, rear setback shown. And there's only a few items on here that I want to touch on. The staff report was fairly long for this item if you read through each of those pieces as we looked at it. But there's a few pieces that I just want to point out. One is there's a requirement that an 8-foot tall fence is required in between commercial and residential zones as a buffer between them. However, this property, the dental office and the Sechrist building to the north and those foundations were in place prior to the townhomes that came in on the west side. So when the townhomes were approved to the west, they constructed a 6-foot vinyl fence as part of their approval. And staff feels that at this point that parking lot expansion, well, it may represent some impact to the residential neighborhood. In reality, adding a few additional dental office chairs to this building doesn't constitute an expansion of the use that's so great that we think it warrants either adding to or eliminating an existing fence and adding a new 8-foot fence, putting 2 fences side by side so you have that 8-foot fence. So this is one of those items that planning commission really needs to make a decision and ruling on.
I have a question about that. Then
Yeah.
Can we discuss that now?
Sure.
Can I? So if the fence is allowed to remain, would that be a non-conforming fence still?
Yeah, at this point, it was, the commercial was built. There was no fencing requirement at whatever time that commercial building was constructed. The apartments constructed their own 6-foot fence. So it's this like chicken and egg of who came first question. If this was a brand new commercial use coming into this site, we would require them to do the 8-foot fence.
Even if there, so even if there were no what am I trying to say here? So if the apartment buildings existed and the ground was level and there was an existing 6-foot fence, if you're building a new building, you'd require them to tear down the 6-foot fence and build an 8-foot fence.
Or build one in front of it, and that's that commercial building we did to the north of this, that 4-bay new commercial building. It's residentially zoned next to it. It just says residentially zoned, so in this case, it meets that requirement. So yeah, it's a technicality, and really, John, if you use your pointer, there's a question that we have on this site plan approval. That's the area right there where the 6-foot fence is. And if you look at the piece of property that the dental office is on, it's actually held back from that residentially zoned piece of property by like a little protection strip. So I have a question on what area we would even require the fence, whether or not, the site plan is impacting both parcels. So we could require it the whole length. It feels, there will be seemingly no benefit to requiring that. Now, that's not a reason necessarily to go against the code, but it's one of those, if the townhome project felt like at their time, the time of approval, the 6-foot fence protected the property rights of those homeowners at that time, went in and you've had no conflicts in that many years, then the addition of 6 additional parking spaces net increase doesn't seem like an impact enough that warrants requiring them to spend thousands of dollars on that fence. Something for the planning commission.
I would like to discuss that a little bit.
Question. I guess when they come up here and talk about it, one thing maybe they could address is if that's required to be willing to do that. Okay, they can address that when they come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll save a little of this for my discussion, but I struggle with this because the practical side of me, and when I reviewed this before the meeting, was locking step with what you were saying. But then as I think about fairness, if this is the time when the city, when new applications come in, this is the time when they are to be brought up to compliance.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to wrestle with that in our discussion, but I don't see that as black and white necessarily.
Certainly. Next, the building expansions of this nature have to meet our design standards. The building is a red brick, earth tone brick building, and they have this nice bay of windows that face north, and you could think of them just basically extruding the building. Those windows will remain on that north side. There's one window that they're going to have out on the Washington Boulevard side. The building is recessed back. The glazing, there's a glazing requirement on commercial frontage buildings. And if you measure just the horizontal widths of those, you can essentially meet that requirement. That window's pretty small, but the way the building is designed, you have 2 storage areas and a corridor on the east side of that building. So it's not real practical to require them to add windows in what would essentially be like storage areas. And also, again, it won't change the overall look and feel of the building. What you're really benefiting from is these nice large north-facing windows that exist today and will continue to exist when the building is expanded. Otherwise, it appears to be matching the existing all brick facade. They've done the same detailing around all the windows, so it really should look seamless, like it was constructed at the same time as the building when it's complete. We did request in the architecture portion about building entrances and pedestrian walkways that a pedestrian walkway be added on their automotive like access on the south side of the building. They've accommodated that. There is no main entrance on the building as it exists from Washington Boulevard. The main entrance is on the west side, and this expansion isn't a main entrance. So I'm not asking them to make that like a main entry point into the building. And then there's a whole bunch of information for the site design, overall concepts. The landscaping on the site is just really mature trees, bushes, and turf grass. Most of the site remains in its current state. There are 3 trees that are being removed in between the 2 parking lots, and there's a bit of a grade change between the parking lots. So we've asked for a pedestrian walkway that connects the 2 buildings and the 2 parking lots, which would be on the east side. And then the code requires that trees be replaced at a 3-to-1 ratio. So I can't tell if one of those trees was like a Russian olive, if it's just one that sprouted up, and in which case that's not like it's a mature tree, but it's not.
It's a trash tree.
It's a trash tree, yeah. So that one's probably arguable on its merits on being replaced on the 3-to-1 ratio. The other two are well-established pine trees that would be removed.
Do we have sidewalk along that stretch of Washington Boulevard?
There is, yeah, but I'll address the sidewalk.
You will address that? Okay.
And then I think that's in the landscaping, or there's the parking lot landscaping. I will address the sidewalk in just a minute. So we're recommending that 9 trees be planted. And because of the nature of the landscaping, you don't have a whole lot of like manicured landscape areas that are being removed. The rest of it could likely be turf grass just for simplicity of maintenance, and then be flexible in where those trees land. So to address the sidewalk standard for Washington Boulevard has been amended to be a 10-foot standard when you don't impact existing nice trees, or you don't have any other like site conditions that would just make that not possible. So we're requesting the sidewalk be expanded, and then our street standard also has specific trees that the planning commission has weighed in on those species of trees, and put those trees in the park strip. So you kind of trade the two that are being eliminated, and you get the street trees out of it for the whole site.
Okay, so would you mind telling me why we have if we have a sidewalk, what the walkway between the two buildings? How did we come to that?
Well, so that's.
Again, that sounds like I'm so critical, but
It's
more
right
like
there where John's pointing there, that's internal to the site, and we have, pedestrians should be able to get out of a parking lot and onto a safe walking space. They shouldn't have to cross the parking lot. It's the same reason you require.
So the walkway is essentially behind the buildings from the parking lot to the rear entries?
Yeah, so right now you have a walkway in front of the dental office and a walkway on the Seacrest building, and then you'll have the parking lot expanded there.
Yeah.
And so we're asking for a walkway essentially along that east side between the two. Yep, connecting them right there. So you don't have to walk off a sidewalk behind parked cars in the asphalt and then jump onto another sidewalk
Mhm.
if you're going from like the north parking area to the south parking area.
Okay.
Good question. Okay. The parking as it's designed is only 1 row deep, so there's no landscape islands required. And again, I think it's 14 spaces, but you have to eliminate almost 8 to make
4
that.
on my side and 4 on his side.
So you're a net increase of 6 parking spaces total, but you're getting a better flow between the 2 parking lots. I imagine one of the reasons that this is being requested and just looking at the site itself is that when exiting on the north side, you can make a left-hand turn, or is it the south? There's a
On mine, you can
median.
make a left or a right turn.
Okay, so it's
On
from
the Tate's side, you can't.
yeah, so from the south side entrance of the dental office, you are able to make a left-hand or a right-hand turn on Washington Boulevard, but the median blocks a left-hand turn from the Seacrest building. You can't make a left headed north on the Washington Boulevard. So this is gonna be, it's almost an internal connecting route now. It's gonna make more ability for drivers to make that north-hand turn or southern turn without coming out onto Washington Boulevard, getting into the median and doing a U-turn to head back north. No net parking lot increase. The building expansion itself is a 1,244 square foot addition, but it also, you have to think of the foundation that's being eliminated. So it's a pretty minor addition to the overall site, and the existing, they're showing that the existing stormwater detention can assume that new impervious surface. There are some low impact design requirements that will need to be shown, but that's like berming and swales on the actual landscaping itself that can be taken care of. And that's one of the engineer's comments. And then the code says essentially all uses other than single family dwellings and multifamily less than 4 units must have a garbage enclosure, and that garbage enclosure has to meet these screening requirements. And then there's a bunch of screening requirements. And I can't see that they have a commercial garbage can on site. I'd imagine that if it's a need that we can bring that, do that administratively, if planning commission can approve that, or it could be part of a future site plan review. But as of right now, I don't feel like we should force on them a trash enclosure if their businesses are of a nature that they don't need a commercial sized garbage enclosure.
Where are the neighbors going to throw their couches and things like that? And like, if not at a local commercial dumpster. Yeah.
Signage will be done administratively, otherwise the development standards. So in the development standards, the Washington Boulevard streetscape standards, which you talked about already with the trees and the sidewalks. And then there are some conditions of approval. This one, if it were a larger site, or the conditions of approval were broader, deeper, more concerning, we would have had those completed before bringing it to planning commission. In staff's opinion, they're pretty simplistic conditions of approval. There's nothing that really should hold the project up. It's items between the engineer, their engineer, and our engineer for low impact design. They need to get their subdivision finalized and recorded. The planning commission needs to determine the 6-foot fence. We have the tree requirement and then the sidewalk requirement. So aside from those drawing changes on this set of plans, those are the items for the planning commission to weigh in on anyways, I feel like, as staff is requiring those, or not in case of the fence, and then help them move forward with a decision.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, before our discussion, and there was a little throughout the presentation, but we'd like to hear from the applicant or give him the opportunity. Is the applicant here?
That microphone should be.
So this is my first planning commission, so.
We'll help you. We'll guide you through this. Okay, so we need your name and where you live.
Richard Wainsgard, it's the property of 2251 North 400 East. I'm the dentist that owns half the property. So yeah, me and Tate Seacrest, the guy to the north, we wanted to basically eliminate those two foundation structures that have been there since 2004, 2005. It's kind of an eyesore to his clientele and my clientele as well. So we wanted to expand that and make the, like you said, parking lot more accessible to not only his staff, but my patients as well. Yeah, it's only going to grow the business of North Ogden. North Ogden's growing like crazy, and we're having a lot of new patients moving in all the time, and we just want to be able to make it more easily accessible for them. So
the staff laid out a couple conditions of approval, which did you find any objections to any of those in there? Did you have a chance to read through those?
So I did. So the fence, that's I bought the practice about 5 years ago, but I have been going to this dental practice since I was in high school, and that fence has always existed. And there's probably from the parking lot, there's maybe a 4 to 5 foot gravel area that prevents us from parking right next to the fence. So, like I said, I don't see the necessity of increasing the fence size because there is a big area there. And like I said, I don't ever see what's going on in the neighbor's backyard. They don't ever see what's going on in my dental offices. And so we're pretty, secluded in that area. So.
Okay, so Commissioner Barker asked for you to address your willingness if it were required to demolish the fence. And
well, so that's not my fence. That's the landowner's fence. So it's going to be, are they going to want that? Are they,
or you'd have to put one in front of it.
Or put one in front of it. But then that's a trash area where
Certainly.
you have a 2 foot space where
Certainly.
stuff's going to get caught in there. So I know there's going to be a trash issue of stuff getting between the fences because there's a dental office to the south of mine. They're on top of a hill and they're constantly getting garbage that's blowing into my parking lot. So I guarantee that's going to be an issue down the road if we have to put a 10-foot fence
8.
in front or 8 foot in front of their 6 foot. But we would work with you guys, whatever you guys recommend, but don't necessarily see the necessity of that.
Okay, thank you. But the other conditions as far as the walkway
Walkways
and the low impact design and all that was That's all acceptable.
Sidewalk improvements on Washington Boulevard.
So right now, what's the width of the sidewalk?
It's probably 4 foot, so it'd be a 6 foot. Yeah,
So then,
4 or
if
5
that's
foot.
the case, are you wanting me to put the side, or if we were to increase the sidewalk, do you want us to go all the way to the corner of Tate Secrest property to the north and go all the way to my parking lot?
Not west, but yeah, the length of the 2 parcels, since you have, the subdivision is one kind of like land use trigger for improvements. And then the site plan is another, but yeah, it would be the length of that to go to a 10-foot wide sidewalk, and you can pour the new panel adjacent to the existing one, so you end up with like a double panel sidewalk. But stretches of this where it's completed are in front of the car wash at Village of Prominence Point, the remainder of Village of Prominence Point down to 1700. The city is doing a new sidewalk project from 1500 to 1700 or so. We're putting in a 10-foot sidewalk ourselves, so we're meeting our standard. And then another new commercial building to the north. So basically, anytime there's that land use trigger request, we're trying to pick up that new sidewalk standard, just so that over time it will build out and we'll have a more walkable, pedestrian friendly Washington Boulevard.
Like I said, I'm here to make, North Ogden City beautiful, so whatever you guys recommend. I know Tate's probably gonna be a little more upset about it, because he has spent a lot of money this last year, redoing his whole entire, when he refurbished his building, brought on a whole new landscaping and sprinkling system and curbing and stuff, so he might be a little more opposed to doing it than my end. I've been there since, 2005, and so we're pretty much, that's the only, I can't speak for him, but that's the only issue I can see him raising.
Okay, thank you. So in regards to that, and this is neither here nor there for our discussion tonight, but I do really appreciate those 2 properties in North Ogden. I think they're well done. I think they don't look so cheaply made. Do you know what I mean? I think they're nice properties, and I think they're an asset to our community. So when I saw that they were being, redone, I also appreciated the plan you guys have put forth. That's just my own opinion. This is not the planning commission, anything, but I thought, I do appreciate what you guys have there in North Ogden. I think it adds to the community.
I think it'll clean the area up really nice.
Yeah.
Make it look a lot nicer.
So I can only speak for myself. As far as, we need to hear from any other public that may have anything to say. We're in the public comment section. Is there any hands raised on Zoom? Okay, I didn't want to cut that out. So as far as our discussion goes, I'm really struggling with the fence because, and I think I commend city staff for being so resident and citizen friendly in how they worded this to us tonight, because I appreciate what he said. So one of the considerations that in the staff report, as you read that, it says the planning commission needs to determine whether the existing 6-foot fence accomplishes the goal of separation and buffering between commercial uses and residential. And I think it does, in my opinion, guys. I think it accomplishes that goal and he wouldn't need to put another fence up. I struggle. So I'm sorry to cut you off. I struggle with it accomplishes that goal. And if I read that sentence, it does. But I struggle with, well, hey, when this is the time to bring things up to enforcement. And so, it's impossible for me to say, does it accomplish that? Does the existing fence accomplish that goal? And say yes, and then say, but we have to put in a second fence. So I'm struggling with that one. So I'd love to hear discussion on that, because like anything, this is the time to bring the sidewalk into conformance, and he wouldn't be required. We wouldn't just go knock on his door and say you have to widen your sidewalk out of the blue. We wait for those opportunities when an application's put in to enforce that. So I'm struggling with that principle. Because the practical, logical side of me, the guy who's driven by there and sees that and doesn't want 2 fences right next to each other, thinks that's the world's worst idea and an undue expense for someone who has a nice business in our town. And the other side of me, the black and white side, says, well, this is what we're supposed to do, and this is administrative action, and we don't have a ton of discretion yet. So
just from a staff perspective on this one, I think that we need to reevaluate our code in requiring residential projects to come after commercial projects to put that 8-foot fence up. But who bears the burden of that? And likely that seemed that at the time that the residential project went in, probably didn't seem like a burden that we wanted to put on them to bear. But in reality, we should approve, apply things consistently between both types of uses. For me, it comes down to if that 12 or 1,400 square foot addition or the total like change had been done prior to the condos coming in, I would imagine the fence required at the time the condos came in, a 6-foot fence wouldn't remain the same. If this were changing from a dental office to a nightclub or a 24-hour, used facility that's going to have.
What kind of business are you running there?
I
Is
guess there's other triggers that I would look at, where it's an expansion of existing building that runs likely 5 or so, not 9, 10 PM. You're not having lights coming in and out of that parking lot. It's not the Maverick where you're next to the residential. I might have had a different feeling about whether or not that 6-foot fence actually meets the intent of the separation between the two. But because it was installed on their side, there is this question about whether or not now you have the land use trigger of new application. Do you require an 8-foot fence on their side, whether they're touching 2 feet apart or, knock on the neighbor's door and tear one out and put a single fence in? I just don't see what it will accomplish. Staff doesn't see what it will accomplish, and this is like a tie goes to the runner in favor of the property owner type of call that staff.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the nature of the business staying the same, that it's not turning into a service station that would, be disturbing residents more than, at nighttime or something like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also did want to say that I think those are 2 very nice buildings here in North Ogden, and the plan that just kind of following on to Commissioner Mason's comments there, that the plan that the applicant has brought forward is helpful. It's very clear and appreciated. So thank you.
Probably be in support of letting the fence remain as is as well. I do have a question though, looking at this site plan on that southwest side. Are there 3 parking stalls that aren't on the property?
Yeah, there's 50% of the entrance isn't on their property proper, and on the plat, there's a note about shared access easement and agreement.
Okay.
And then that parking lot as it runs south is a joint use parking lot with the buildings to the south.
Yeah.
But
It's a dental office that has excess flow parking,
Okay.
cut on top of the hill, so there's not, some of their staff park there, but it's kind of a, a shared parking.
Okay. I'm just curious. It's kind of weird to see it not on the actual property. So.
So I'm getting the consensus here that we're in favor of pretty much allowing a fence, or allowing the fence to remain as is and not put a new burden on the property owner. Okay, I can definitely, that practical side of me can totally appreciate that. And so so with the principle of the sidewalk, I don't see that as negotiable. I don't think the city will get another opportunity to expand that. And I'm when we did a poll to the residents and asked them what they wanted their downtown to be, they want a walkable downtown, and our ordinance requires a 10-foot sidewalk there, right? And if you've ever tried to walk down a 5-foot sidewalk side by side, and I'm a big guy, so maybe, but it's just impossible. So I am in favor of enforcing the 10-foot sidewalk along there. Other thoughts on that?
I agree with that.
If you're going to have all of Washington Boulevard go to that 10-foot sidewalk, it just makes sense to have it be put in so it's already there and going.
And it was stated earlier, this is the land use trigger that will get that done. This is the time.
When is that going to be coming into effect, where if all Washington goes to 10-foot sidewalks? Is that going to be like when Subway decides to add on to their building? Because right now their building, where their sidewalk is that 4 or 5.
Yeah, so you heard tonight about, and so you heard tonight about land use triggers. So as you put in applications and stuff, then that's the time to enforce the ordinances. So right now I would, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your sidewalk would be non-conforming, but it's grandfathered, right? Is that, am I saying that correctly? It existed before the ordinance was expanded it. And so you have a non-conforming grandfathered sidewalk. And so now as you put in this new application, you're asked to bring it up into conformance.
Do you
So-
guys care, right now, you know, you have a little park strip, grassy area between the street and the current sidewalk. Where does where does the additional space come from? More towards the
Yeah.
street or more towards the building side?
So Washington Boulevard's right-of-way width is very generous. So behind the current sidewalk, there's probably still another 6 or 8 feet that's in the actual street right-of-way along Washington Boulevard. Park strips are snow storage for the most part, so we would say on the inside, and that still likely won't, it shouldn't, I would imagine, touch your property. You can see where your property line runs.
Yeah,
Versus kind of the back of the sidewalk. So there's right now a pretty large area of
Yeah.
improved area that's not on your property, but we would go west from the edge of sidewalk. So inward into your project.
So, and just by a point of order, because you asked also, so if in a future meeting like this, so they're pretty strict on when people can address us and stuff like that. And we're going to suspend that tonight, and that's okay. Like I'm not coming down on you. You asked. Okay. And so there's generally reserved times for your comments and things like that. And I think those were valid questions, and I'm glad we had the discussion. Okay. If you find yourself in another city council meeting or something, okay, they may not be as fluid as that. So,
thanks.
okay, no problem. So do we want to have further discussion on this item? Are we ready for a motion? I'd like to have a motion on the table that we can talk to, if we could get that out there now.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we approved, we approved the site plan of building footprint expansion, park lot expansion located 2251 North Washington Boulevard, along with the conditional, whatever it is in the staff report, what they call conditional approvals in the staff report.
Conditions of approval.
Yeah, conditional approval in the staff report.
Did you want to address the fence?
On the family lot fence to remain as is. And the sidewalk expansion be on the west side of the existing sidewalk.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the item as written with the conditions of approval as written by staff, noting that the 6 foot, the existing 6 foot fence accomplishes its goal and doesn't need any alteration. Did I state that correctly? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We have further discussion opportunity to this before we vote, if we choose. I think we hashed it. Commissioner Arner, you have anything?
No.
Okay, so there's no further discussion. Let me get a vote in, and I'm a little unprepared here. Normally have a grid when I'm conducting here, so.
Just like it.
Okay, Commissioner Arner, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Lunt,
Yes.
Commissioner Webb,
Yes.
Commissioner Barker,
Yes.
and I'm an emphatic yes. So our motion passes. Okay, so thanks for your time tonight. Okay, our next item is our last item, which is information regard. So it's informational. We're not going to vote on this.
No,
Okay.
no, this,
So this was an approved subdivision, approved administratively by staff. Great. That have impacted the North Ogden City Center subdivision phase 2.
I'm gonna let Ty come up and do this. He did the notice of decision. We haven't, I don't think I've been perfectly consistent with this because I did approve a boundary line adjustment, but our code says that when we do administrative staff reports for subdivisions, we let you know after notice of decision in the next, probably in the next meeting of the planning commission. And this one is actually next door to the city hall, and I'm gonna let Ty jump up and tell us what's going on.
So as Scott was saying, this was handled administratively. It's 2-lot subdivision with lot 1 being sold. And lot 2 is designated as wetlands and will remain essentially the same. The biggest improvements coming in was part of the subdivision. There's going to be a sidewalk required along 475 east, right there. And then there, I don't know, is this parcel A will be, that's kind of the outstanding issues will be taken care of and tied with the property adjacent to it.
Yeah, so the connection used to be here out to the main road. And we shifted it over onto this parcel, so it in theory is gonna be tied into this agreement with the way Fizz, Smiths and Ace Hardware handle their access. But we need the subdivision done before we can finish that process.
And then that property is commercially zoned. Lot 2 would be held in perpetuity as a designated wetland area, but lot 1, the intention is to sell it and have a new commercial building constructed in the future.
Any questions?
No, I love that you guys did that without us. That's great.
Yeah, well, the city's been working on it. There's been kind of a multi-step process. So, we're in the business typically of reviewing plans. So our city engineer had to contact another engineer we work with to draw this up. And then there's the wetland designation, which is a component of it, and the access, and it's all sort of wrapped into this canvas plan that ultimately the city will do for the new public safety building and other improvements. But lot or subdivisions that don't require any dedication under 10 units or 10 lots are administratively done, and that'll exist in the new code as well through both. There's really no preliminary and final. It's a notice of decision and then correct any issues and you can record the plat. But that'll exist in the new code as well. In the new code, you'll see preliminary subdivision applications, but not finals. So staff will take care of all final elements, which is the way most cities have been going, because by the time you're at a final plat recordation, you've had all of your improvement drawings approved, you have all of the plat notes typically done, and it's ready for a Mylar to be printed and signed and recorded.
And then poor Dr. Wainsgard's wondering, why did I need to come in here tonight?
That's right.
Like,
If there was no, so and this is one of those, the differences is, had it been a boundary line adjustment only with no site plan
Yeah.
approval, then it would have gone just to staff would have approved it. But it's that the addition of the building and it's valuation based, so.
Yeah. Well, frankly, in his case, there was enough interpretive things that needed to come before us, right?
For sure.
Like, so. Okay. Thanks, Guy.
And
We'll see a site plan come in on lot 1 in the future. That will be planning commission.
Even though you're speaking out of turn, I'm going to allow it. I just want you to know.
I don't know, I think God will watch it, but what you know.
Okay. When I get, yeah, I know, there's a gavel, I'm feeling very powerful right now. I'm like,
Did we do the minutes and I just missed the first and second?
we did not do the minutes. Thank you so much. I wasn't, thank you for that. Okay, so item number 2 on our agenda was to approve the October 20th Planning Commission meeting minutes, a meeting I did not attend.
I'll
So,
make a motion that we approve the October 20th, 2021 minutes.
I'll second it.
okay, we have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All in favor, voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Note that there was none opposed. Thank you. Thanks for that, Mr. Hess. Okay, item number 8, round of the home stretch here. Items from planning commissioners. Remarks.
Couple, there's not really anything I don't think what we do here is just I have a question. The building has been taking place in visionary homes on the Northwood subdivision up by us. The trail goes from Barker Park up to that subdivision. They have the hollows that belong to the city. There's been a lot of garbage and trash blown in there during that construction because of all the winds. Who's going to be held responsible to clean that out of there? I've had a number of residents come to me complaining about it. And I go, I don't know, if the visionary home's going to be held accountable and clean it out. The city's going to have to clean it out.
We'll get with visionary.
Okay, the
I'll
second.
talk to the inspector.
There's some probably fit right into that too, because of the trail going through that subdivision where they built the homes. They had to put the dirt and everything on top of the trail. That trail's been just demolished.
Yeah.
But there's no law before we do that.
They've got a lot of repairs to make to the trail.
Okay, that, I just had some people talk to me about it, and I walked, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. I'm glad I don't live along there. I'd have a fence up so fast.
8 foot, 6 foot? What would- Does it accomplish a goal? Okay.
And that is good to identify. That is, so our public works inspectors, that's one of the trail and some of those other things are severe enough that we've actually made sure the mayor's aware of it in some of our staff meetings that, hey, when you hear complaints, it's being addressed. The visionary will live up to what they promised to, and they haven't pushed back. They know that some of the stuff, some of the damage on that trail and other things it was their subcontractors that did it, and they know they have to fix it.
I kind
So-
of thought that'd be the case. I know there's a home along there, that the water is not retained on their property. It's going off into the city's property and off onto the trail. I already talked to the city about that. I don't know if I have a chance to look at it yet.
Okay.
I thought it was just, temporary, putting the water that way. When their fence went up, well, that's not temporary.
Thank you, Commissioner Barker.
Uh-huh.
Any other comments? Okay, can we hear from our planning director?
Yeah, just a reminder to watch that video that was sent out from ULUI. So I have received some notice that folks have watched it and
Good video.
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
It'll fit right in what we do really well.
Yeah, I think it's a good training and it's a little different than the Brent Bateman. It's along the same line, Road Planning Commission, but you just get a totally different experience from existing planning commission members and other folks. So good video. Just email me once you've had a chance to watch it.
I need to come down to the city office and get my, or call or something and get email going on my iPad.
Okay.
Because I'm not getting emails forwarded to my personal email anymore. I was, and those seem to have stopped. So I never check the northogden.org email, like ever.
So we can connect you. Bryce is probably he's the one who's here the most that can help.
I probably just need a password.
Yeah, he's
like-
way more tech savvy than most of the rest of us are.
Okay.
Oh, come on, John, you did a good job on mine.
Well, there's a difference between someone who studied art in school and an artist. Let's just put it that way.
Well, speaking of your artwork, do you have any remarks for us?
No, other than, tying back into our moment of silence, the city did send some flowers.
I saw that.
To acknowledge
Mhm.
because of his service to the community, but, we wish we could recognize everyone who's ever served for the city because there's so many of them out there and we're just,
Yeah.
we do try to recognize to the families who remain, everyone that we're aware of who passes away in the city, the mayor sends a note and things. And so anyways, it is a big loss for us. So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. Sorry to be selfish with that. Steve was a friend of
No.
mine, and so
no,
I
you're good.
wanted to shine some light on that. So I saw the flowers at his viewing, and that was a nice gesture. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. That's all we have. Might have anything else?
You know, when you're getting old, when you start going to nothing but viewings and funerals instead of wedding receptions.
On that note, speaking of the end of things, what about the end of this meeting?
Move that we
Can you
adjourn.
please go till 7:30?
You want to go to Sunday? We have one motion to adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Is that a second? We have a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
sorry, I second that.
Commissioner
I
Lunt,
hear you, I'm
Commissioner,
sorry.
seconded by Commissioner Arner. Voice vote, all in favor to adjourn. Aye.
Hi,
Any opposed? Thanks, everyone.
thanks, everyone.
See you, Johnson.